Hello and welcome. This is the Death Row and Executions channel, where I mostly present cases of an upcoming execution to take place soon. My name is Paco Rivera. You can also follow me on Facebook for updates and more death row news. There will be a link to my Facebook in the description below. Also, check out my other channel here on YouTube called The Maximum Sentence, where I cover recent crimes and convictions. There will be a link for that as well. The state of Indiana has set the date of December 18th, 2024 for the first execution to take place there in 15 years. The last time Indiana executed a death row inmate was in the year 2009 when they executed Matthew Eric Wrinkles, who was sentenced to death for a mass murder of 3 people: his wife, his wife's sister, and the sister's husband. By the way, no court has even sentenced anyone to death in the past 10 years in the state of Indiana. Indiana has just 8 inmates on death row, all men, 3 for killing cops, compared to Texas with 181 and Florida with 294 inmates on death row. The next execution scheduled to take place in Indiana is also for a mass murderer. Joseph Edward Corcoran killed his brother, his sister's boyfriend, or fiancé rather, and 2 of their friends who were visiting the house where Corcoran lived. Those 4 murders, which Corcoran fully admitted to by telling the first police officers to arrive on the scene that he did it and to go ahead and arrest him, happened in the year 1997 when Corcoran was 22 years old. But we first need to go back to the year 1992 when Corcoran was 16 years old. About an hour after he had boarded a school bus, Joseph Corcoran's parents, 53-year-old Jack Corcoran, a former Marine, and Corcoran's mother, 47-year-old Catherine Corcoran, were found dead in their home, having been shot with a 12-gauge shotgun. An investigation concluded that Corcoran was extremely angry with his parents and that they had been at odds for quite some time. He told friends that his parents were way too strict with him, that they sold a spare car that they didn't need instead of giving him the car, which he thought he was going to get, that they burned all of his music tapes, and that they were forcing him to go to church. How dreadful. And several of his friends informed investigators that Corcoran had offered them money to kill his parents. Detectives stated that Joseph Corcoran arrived at Hamilton High School in Hamilton, Indiana on time that morning. When they went to the school and removed him from class, he didn't appear at all surprised at the notification of his parents' death. He exhibited no emotions of being distraught or bothered by the news. They also agree that sometimes people grieve in different ways, but it was very unusual to them. Neighbors of Jack and Kate Corcoran told investigators that they had a dog at the house that would bark its head off whenever a stranger approached the property. Yet, nobody heard a peep from that dog that morning. And there were no signs of forced entry into the house. Nothing was taken from the home, so it wasn't a robbery. Prosecutors thought they had enough. Joseph Corcoran turned 17 years old 4 days after the crime and was later tried in court for the double murder. However, after the 5-day trial, a jury found him not guilty. Now, bear in mind that most of those jurors were later interviewed and that every one of them said that by deciding not guilty, that doesn't mean he didn't do it. As a matter of fact, they all believed he did kill his parents. There was one juror who insisted on voting guilty, but rather than cause a mistrial, he relented and decided to go ahead and agree with the others. Anyway, jurors stated that they had to choose not guilty because, unfortunately, the prosecution had no direct evidence linking Joseph Corcoran to the murders. It was all guesswork and circumstantial. Joseph Corcoran's siblings, his brother James Corcoran, who he kills 5 years later, and his sister Kelly Nieto both defended their little brother fiercely and had made statements that there was no way that their brother had killed their parents. Now, fast forward 5 years. 22-year-old Joseph Corcoran was living in a home on Bayer Avenue in Fort Wayne, Indiana, along with his sister, Kelly Nieto, and her fiancé, Robert Turner. Kelly also had a 7-year-old daughter there, Joseph Corcoran's niece. Joseph and Kelly's brother, James Corcoran, was also living there. Best I can tell, the house on Bayer Avenue, which according to real estate records was built in 1935, was later demolished and no longer exists. It appears to be an empty lot there now. Someone commented on another channel that it was burned down to the ground. According to statements made by Joseph Corcoran himself, shortly after the crime occurred, on July 26, 1997, his brother James and his sister's fiancé, Robert Turner, was sitting on couches in the living room along with two friends that were visiting the house that day, Douglas Stillwell and Timothy Bricker, both 30 years old. Both Douglas and Timothy were married and had children. The four men were eating pizza and watching television and talking. Corcoran's 7-year-old niece was also in the house. His sister, Kelly Nieto, however, had left the house and went to a grocery store to shop for some things. Corcoran said that he was in an upstairs bedroom of the house and could clearly hear the conversation taking place between the four individuals downstairs in the living room, and that they were speaking badly about him. He became enraged and left the room. He spotted his little niece and guided her to another bedroom and forced her to wait in there. Joseph Corcoran then proceeded to load a Ruger Mini 14 semi-automatic rifle. He went downstairs and began firing the weapon at everyone in the living room. His brother James, his sister's fiancé Robert Turner, and one of the friends, Timothy Bricker, were all killed right there on the couches. The other friend, Douglas Stillwell, managed to make a run for it, but Corcoran caught up to him in the kitchen, and Stillwell was killed there in the kitchen. Corcoran then walked outside and spotted a neighbor and asked him to call police. When officers arrived at the house, it is reported that the first words Corcoran spoke were, "You might as well just arrest me now." It should be noted that when Corcoran's sister, Kelly Nieto, learned of the incident, she stated that she was now convinced that her brother did kill her parents and regretted having defended him. Now, even though James Corcoran had reportedly also defended his little brother regarding the murders of their parents 5 years earlier, that appears to be in contradiction to statements later made by Kelly Nieto that James always knew that their brother Joseph had done it. And furthermore, he had predicted that he, James, would be next. Kelly Nieto's young daughter was carried out of the home, and reports indicate that a hand was placed over her eyes to prevent her from seeing the carnage that had transpired. To avoid going to trial and putting the families of 4 murder victims through all the trauma that comes with it, prosecutors decided to offer Corcoran a plea agreement that involved a life without parole sentence. Corcoran was aware that a trial could end with him being sentenced to death. However, Corcoran's lawyer notified the prosecution that he had rejected that deal and will take his chances with a mentally insane defense. Well, the insanity defense did not work. In 1999, 2 years after the crime had occurred, Joseph Corcoran was found guilty and he was sentenced to death. Personally, I find it hard to believe that someone would kill 4 people with the motive being that they were talking badly about him. It would seem more likely that an anger he had for the individuals in the living room that day had already been brewing for quite some time. And because of that, the state of Indiana is set to execute Joseph Corcoran on December 18th. With the end of the year approaching, if nothing changes, we have one more execution scheduled this year, that of Kevin Underwood in Oklahoma. An execution scheduled for the day after Joseph Corcoran on December 19th. A presentation on the case of Kevin Underwood should appear on this channel next week. Please remember to hit the subscribe button for more death row and upcoming execution stories so that you're alerted when the next one comes out. You can also follow me on Facebook for updates. There will be a link to my Facebook in the description below. I am Paco Rivera. Take care and bye for now.